Today I finished watching The Matrix Resurrections for the very first time, and this video is going to focus specifically on how it further expanded the philosophy of the original trilogy. From a philosophical perspective, there are a lot of things to like about this movie, and I want to share it with everyone. I reserve the right to change my mind on certain things because this is only after one viewing, and Matrix movies are known to be dense. In addition, here's a major spoilers warning. I'm going to be spoiling everything. I'm going to timestamp everything, so feel free to check out the timeline to navigate this video. I'm also going to keep it relatively high level to keep this video short and to the point. One of the things I really like about Matrix 4 is the deconstruction of the Christ narrative. Diving deeper into the original trilogy's theology, you realize that it's more Gnostic Christian or Buddhist or Hindu. I'll be making a video about this in the future, so make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell for when it comes out. Specifically, one of the things that Matrix 4 really emphasizes is that the salvation narrative inside the original Matrix is now completely broken. No longer are we relying on the one to save us, but we can all more or less become the one as Trinity did at the very end. The whole idea of predestination in the one has been completely subverted in this new development. It really makes a lot of sociological sense given how different society is versus 20 years ago, where fact and reason really reign supreme, while now the whole postmodern voice is much stronger in the public consciousness. The second thing I really liked about Matrix 4 is that it retained its epistemological core, and epistemology in philosophy is the study of what is real and how do we know. All of that stuff is still intact. Whether it's Jean Baudrillard's Simulation Simulacra, Plato's Cave, Descartes' Evil Demon, Marx's Capitalist Machine, Socratic questioning, all of that stuff is retained. And if you want to know the details of what I'm talking about, please check out the video in the cards above where I covered the philosophical core of the original Matrix trilogy.
What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch.
The main point is that knowledge is liberating. And one of the main themes in the previous trilogy was to know thyself, which was the mantelpiece hanging above the Oracle's kitchen. The message of knowing thyself is very important for someone in their late 30s, which was what Keanu Reeves was at the time when he filmed the original Matrix trilogy. The Matrix Resurrections does an important pivot from knowing thyself to remembering thyself. When you move on to your 50s, it's kind of hard to talk about know thyself because at that point, you probably know yourself very well. And at the time of filming this movie, Keanu Reeves is 57 years old.
You don't know me, no?
The character Bugs in the movie, her ship is called the Mnemosyne, which is the goddess of memories in Greek mythology. Similar to how Morpheus is the god of dreams in the original trilogy. His whole mission was to wake Neo up from his slumber. In the Matrix Resurrections, the whole goal of this is to remember who you are because you can't forget in your daily grind in life. And when you're stuck in an illusion like Neo and Trinity were, looking at the mirror may not actually reflect who you truly are. Or perhaps you've taken on a fake identity, just like Trinity did with her name Tiffany. And so the main thrust of the movie is resurrecting that essence. Not to mention, the plaques on Morpheus's and Bugs' ships are Mark 3, 11, and 19 respectively. The former is about declaring you're the one, and the latter is about betrayal. You can just quickly Google the Bible for that. What are your thoughts on that? Let me know in the comments below. The third thing I really liked about Matrix 4 is how it challenged the false dichotomy of binary. Is it really man or machine, or can it be man and machine? The binary symbolism is everywhere in Matrix 4, and if you're not familiar with what binary means, it's basically using ones and zeros to write code in the computer. And there's also the city of Io, where Bugs and Niobe are based in. Io could also be read as 1 and 0, which actually stands for 2 in binary code, which symbolizes the second city of humanity after Zion. There's also a simulation that Neo is working on at his company called Binary, which is where he trapped Morpheus in Moto 101.
An experiment.
An experiment? You put me in a tiny motor, left me to bang my head till I nearly lost my searching for you as an experiment.
And the whole idea behind binary in code is presenting a dichotomy where you can either choose to say yes or no. And sometimes that's simply a false dichotomy in life. There may be a third alternative. In fact, a false dichotomy is often a fallacy used to trick people. So for example, if you want your kids to eat vegetables, you can ask them, do you want peas or do you want broccoli? It's really not a choice for the kid.
This can't be real.
And that's reflected in the extreme and purist position that Zion took when it comes to man and machine. Meanwhile, a Niobe-led Io deferred from that position and integrated machines in their daily lives. The characters in Matrix 4 are now dealing with much more complex systems, which is why the Neologist told Neo that he wishes they were back in simpler times where it was just simply fight for freedom. Now they're actually learning how to navigate life with much more nuance and complexity, such as integrating machines into society. This position is also reflected within the Matrix. No longer is the Matrix about facts and productivity. It's more about the narrative, what's the fiction that's going on in people's minds, and the emotions behind it. The complexity has increased because we are now factoring human elements that were not available in previous iterations of the Matrix.
I've had dreams that weren't just dreams. Am I crazy?
We don't use that word in here.
And this whole idea of challenging the false dichotomy of the binary can be found in Aristotelian ethics. So for example, in that framework, courage is a virtue. However, if you have too much of it, it becomes recklessness. Or if you have too little of it, it becomes cowardice. The main idea is how do you really strike that balance and find a sweet spot, which he calls the golden mean. Perhaps this is something that we should be thinking about right now as we start pondering the integration of machines in our daily lives. Recently, this video has been making the rounds on the internet, and a lot of people feel uneasy about the lifelike expressions that this robot is able to give. In addition, you have robot dogs like this walking around. It looks like we're not actually too far from the world of the Animatrix, which is what led to the downfall of humanity and set the world of the Matrix into motion. Another thing that I really liked about Matrix Resurrections is the soteriology within the movie. And soteriology is a study of salvation using religious doctrines, and it deliberately builds on the original trilogy. Now, we can simply look at music in this instance. So, for example, in Matrix 1 and 2, the theme songs are Wake Up and Calm Like a Bomb by Rage Against the Machine. And both of them, the message is that the system is rigged against you. The only way to break out of this is to crash the system. By the time we get to Matrix 3 Revolutions, there's a huge difference in terms of the message that the music is conveying. In Matrix 3, the theme song at the end is called Navras, and the lyrics of the song is actually Sanskrit for freeing yourself from the cycle of suffering. I'm not going to repeat the lyrics in here, you can just do a quick Google of Navras to look it up, but essentially it's about breaking yourself from the cycle of samsara. And this is symbolized in the non-stop cycle of destruction and reconstruction by the architect of destroying and rebuilding Zion, and how the one is simply a cog in the machine, and at the end of this, he brokered peace by defeating Smith and returning to the source, which is the same thing as reaching enlightenment in Buddhism and Hinduism. And in Buddhism, it'll be reaching Nirvana. Hinduism, it'll be reaching Brahman. So if you're looking at the themes of Matrix 1, 2, and 3, it's basically suffering, suffering, and finally reaching enlightenment.
No, it's not fair.
Now, Matrix 4 is very interesting because it places two songs in a very prominent position and one in a less prominent position. The two prominent songs are obviously White Rabbit, which was used in its trailer. When you read the lyrics of White Rabbit, it's pretty straightforward when it comes to being applied to Matrix 4. One pill makes you larger, which is obviously the red pill because it enlightens you, and one pill makes you small, which makes you submit to the system. Another line that really pops out is feed your head, which is repeated several times. And it reinforces the idea of memory, remembering yourself, knowing yourself. Of course, there are huge psychedelic undertones here, and the song is a product of the hippie generation in the 60s. But the main point is liberating the mind and really freeing yourself from the captivity of the system. The other prominent song is, once again, Wake Up from Matrix 1. But this time, it's covered by Brass Against with Sofia Urista. So it stays true to the Matrix 1 theme of gaining awareness to fight the system. However, most people would not notice that the ending credits actually also have the song Navras, but this time it does not sing the lyrics, which symbolizes that Neo and Trinity are actually still in samsara, which is the cycle of suffering. I see another two movies coming to create a second trilogy to wrap up the loose ends. The fifth thing I like about The Matrix Resurrections is how it sets itself up for more storytelling and world building in the future. This will inevitably impact the Matrix saga's philosophical development. For example, in the very last scene when Trinity kills and raises the analysts from the dead 3 times in a row, he laughs at them and questions whether they're ready to have the burden of control in rewriting the Matrix. And he mocks them, like, what are you gonna do, paint rainbows in the sky? And then he maintains that the sheeple aren't going anywhere. There are tons of other questions that can be explored. On the human side, we could ask the questions. What happened to Niobe? What happened to OG Morpheus? What happened to Zion, the city of humanity? What about the different human factions that disagree on how they should relate to machines? And on the machine side of things, what are the different factions? How do they break down? Who are the players? What programs are important and what programs are not? Most importantly, where the heck is Deus Ex Machina, which is the big talking robotic head at the end of Revolutions? But they did give him a shout out naming Neo's company Deus Machina, which means God Machine, basically a slap in the face because Deus Ex Machina means God out of machine, which is a literary device. But when you say something is Deus Machina, you're basically declaring God is the machine. Also, what happened to Smith? Why does he call Neo Tom for most of the movie instead of Mr. Anderson like he did once upon a time?
Mr. Anderson!
How about the last thing that he said to Neo? Anyone can be you, while I've always been anyone.
I've missed you.
And that phrase is intentionally profound because it's an anti-metaboly. And there's still the lingering question of whether the outside world is actually just a simulation. Any of these questions that I just asked can potentially change the philosophical framework of the whole saga. What questions do you have about the Matrix saga moving forward? Let me know in the comments below. Overall, I feel The Matrix Resurrections is a solid addition to the Matrix Trilogy, and it sets up the franchise to go in many directions moving forward. If you have any philosophical observations, leave it in the comments below. They always generate interesting dialogue. If you enjoyed this video, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel and also hit the notification bell. Also, share this video with others who you feel may enjoy this. Take care, everyone.